Imagine a world where statues as tall as 10-story buildings tower over the seashore, and hanging gardens spread across deserts. 2,000 years ago, travelers compiled lists of amazing structures, the wonders of the world. They were symbols of the wealth, faith, and craftsmanship of ancient civilizations. We have seen images of them in books and on screens, but the reality is that almost all of these wonders have disappeared. Of the 7 legendary structures, only the pyramids in Egypt remain. What happened to the other masterpieces? They turned to dust, became stones at the bottom of the ocean, or were used as foundations for residential buildings. Where did these giant structures disappear to, and why did humanity fail to preserve them? In this story, we will try to understand how the greatest monuments of history perished and what remains of them. This is a story about how time, natural disasters, and human stupidity wiped away from the face of the earth what seemed eternal. To understand how the wonders of the world disappeared, you need to imagine a world that was completely different. In ancient times, there was no concrete, steel, or electricity, and every building was a true feat of engineering. People spent years obtaining rare materials, transporting tons of gold, and lifting huge blocks to incredible heights. However, when powerful empires began to decline, their main symbols became vulnerable. The reasons for the destruction were varied and sometimes quite mysterious. The history of this wonder begins with a war and a victory that seemed like divine intervention. In 355 BC, the mighty fleet of Demetrius Poliorcetes approached Rhodes using advanced siege technology. His main weapon was the Tower of Heliopolis, which translates as conqueror of cities. It was a huge tower covered with iron for protection against fire and equipped with powerful catapults. The inhabitants of Rhodes defended themselves heroically for a whole year, using all their resources. In the end, Demetrius retreated, leaving his equipment behind. Instead of dismantling the machines, the townspeople turned the military symbols into a monument to freedom. They sold the towers for a large sum of money and invited the sculptor Chares to create a statue of the god Helios. Initially, the idea was modest, but ambitions grew rapidly. At first, the customers requested a statue 18 meters high, but then decided to double its size. The sculptor agreed, unaware that doubling the height would require 8 times more materials. Construction began in 292 BC and continued for 12 years. To lift heavy parts to such a height, Chares used an unusual method. A huge earth embankment was erected around the statue, which, like a living creature, grew along with the monument. After the work was completed and the earth was removed, a bronze giant reaching 33 meters in height appeared before the audience. The Colossus was placed on a white marble pedestal at the entrance to the harbor. Its internal structure was a sturdy frame of iron beams and stone blocks, and on the outside it was covered with sheets of wrought bronze. The reflection of the sun's rays played on the metal, and sailors could see its glare from many kilometers away. But the giant's life was short-lived. In 226 BC, a powerful earthquake struck. The tremors were so strong that the fastenings inside its legs gave way. The bronze god broke at the knees and fell, crushing the nearby buildings. This is how the expression, "a colossus with feet of clay," came about, describing a combination of power and fragility. For 800 years, the giant lay on the shore, becoming a famous landmark. Pliny the Elder noted that few could wrap their hand around the statue's finger. The end came in 653 AD. Arab troops, led by the commander Muawiyah, captured the island. The new authorities saw nothing but a valuable resource in the ruins. On their orders, the remains of the bronze body were divided into parts. A caravan of 900 camels was needed to transport the metal. The bronze was sold to a merchant who probably melted down this masterpiece into coins or weapons. Today, only 2 columns with images of deer remain at the site where the Colossus is believed to have stood. Not a single fragment of the greatest statue of its time remains to be analyzed. The giant disappeared without a trace in history, leaving only a memory of human pride and how fragile great creations can be. If the Colossus of Rhodes symbolized triumph, then the Lighthouse of Alexandria on the island of Pharos was the pinnacle of engineering, serving people for a millennium and a half. Its construction began around 285 BC by order of Ptolemy I, a companion of Alexander the Great. The project was led by the architect Herostratus of Cnidus. Herostratus was forbidden to put his name on the structure, as the glory was to belong to the king. The master carved an inscription on the stone in which he paid tribute to the gods for their work in saving sailors. Then he covered it with a layer of plaster and wrote the name of the ruler on top. Many years later, the plaster peeled off under the influence of the wind, and the name of the tower's creator became known to the whole world. The lighthouse was a 3-tiered tower, over 120 meters high, making it one of the tallest buildings in the world. The lower tier, square in shape, served as housing for workers and garrison soldiers. The middle tier, which had 8 sides, was decorated with bronze statues. The upper tier was cylindrical, and it was there that a fire was lit every night. In order for the light to be visible at a distance of 50 kilometers, the Greeks used a system of polished bronze mirrors. With amazing precision, they focused the rays and directed them into the open sea. During the day, a thick column of smoke always rose above the tower, which was also a reliable landmark for merchant ships arriving in wealthy Alexandria from all corners of the Mediterranean. A huge amount of firewood was needed to operate the lighthouse. The fuel was carried up a spiral staircase inside the tower with the help of donkeys. The lighthouse was so sturdy that it survived the collapse of the Ptolemaic Empire, the invasion of the Roman legions, and the Arab conquest. However, time and natural disasters gradually destroyed its foundation. The first significant damage occurred in 796 AD, when an earthquake destroyed the upper part of the tower along with the lighting installation. After this incident, the lighthouse lost its functionality and served as a watchtower for the coastline for many years. In the middle of the 9th century, the Arab authorities attempted to restore the lighthouse, but instead of a signal fire at its top, they erected a mosque dome. At the same time, a mysterious legend about a Byzantine spy arose. It was said that the Byzantine emperor sent a skilled deceiver to the caliph, who gained the ruler's trust and convinced him that Alexander the Great's untold treasures were hidden under the base of the lighthouse. Yielding to the persuaders, the caliph ordered the building to be demolished immediately. The workers managed to dismantle the famous mirrors and destroy part of the upper floors before the deception was revealed. Perhaps this is just a myth, but the lighthouse began to collapse at an alarming rate after the intervention in its construction. In the 14th century, the final blow to the lighthouse was dealt by the elements. In 1333 and 1323, 2 powerful earthquakes destroyed what remained of the lighthouse, reducing it to a pile of stone blocks. When the traveler Ibn Battuta visited Alexandria in 1349, he noted that the tower was in such a deplorable state that it was impossible to enter it. The ruined blocks of marble and granite lay on the shore and in the sea, buried in silt. In 1477, Sultan Kait Bey, wishing to use this strategically important location to defend the city, ordered a powerful fortress to be built on the remaining ruins of the lighthouse, which has survived to this day. To optimize time and resources, workers used stones left over from the destroyed wonder. As a result, the lighthouse disappeared, dissolving into the walls of the medieval fort. At the end of the 20th century, in 1994, archaeologists discovered hundreds of fragments of statues and blocks weighing up to 70 tons at the bottom of the bay. The true remains of the lighthouse, discarded during construction or fallen during earthquakes, found their final resting place in the depths of the sea. While the Lighthouse of Alexandria and the Colossus of Rhodes were material objects whose remains were discovered by archaeologists, the Hanging Gardens of Semiramis remain the most mysterious object on the list of wonders of the world. Scientists are still hotly debating whether they were real or just a figment of the imagination of ancient writers. According to the most widespread legend, the gardens were built in the 6th century BC by the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar II. He ordered this artificial wonder to be built for his wife Amytis, who came from the mountainous and green region of Media. The queen missed the coolness of the forests and the smell of flowers in dusty and hot Babylon, so her husband decided to give her a whole world of mountains in the heart of the plain. This structure was technically complex. The gardens were a pyramid consisting of 4 tiers connected by staircases made of white and pink stone. Each tier's base was made of slabs covered with a layer of reeds, poured with asphalt and faced with brick. Lead sheets were laid on top to prevent water seepage and destruction of the supports. Only then was a sufficient layer of fertile soil poured in so that massive trees could take root. From a height, it seemed as if the lush tree crowns were floating in the air, which is how the gardens got their name. One of the main mysteries of Babylon was its irrigation system. The city was located in a dry climate, and the plants required a huge amount of water. Engineers developed a unique mechanism for this purpose. Inside one of the columns were pipes through which water from the Euphrates River was lifted to the upper floors. Huge wheels with leather buckets were used as a drive, which were rotated by slave labor. The water flowed down artificial streams and waterfalls, providing coolness and the necessary humidity. It was the first large-scale irrigation system of its kind, implemented in a multi-level building. It is interesting to note that the name of the gardens is associated with Semiramis, who lived 2 centuries before Nebuchadnezzar. Perhaps Greek historians simply confused the names or combined different legends. The gardens reached their peak for about 2 centuries, and in 331 BC, when Alexander the Great conquered Babylon, he was struck by their beauty and made the city his capital. It is said that the great conqueror spent his last days in the shade of the Hanging Gardens, secluded from the noise and enjoying the tranquility and fragrance of exotic plants. After Alexander's death, the gardens began to fall into ruin. The city began to decline, and with it, the irrigation system collapsed. Due to the lack of water from the Euphrates, the trees died under the intense sun. The roots that had previously held the soil in place dried up, and the earth began to crumble. Heavy floods washed away the foundation, which was built of unfired bricks. Unlike the stone pyramids, the Babylonian buildings were constructed of clay, which quickly deteriorates and turns into hills without proper care. By the 1st century AD, nothing remained of the gardens but ruins. The Roman historian Strabo, describing this place, mentioned only the remains of arches and terraces. Over time, the sands of the desert completely buried the remains of the structures. In the 20th century, archaeologist Robert Koldewey, conducting excavations in Babylon, discovered an unusual foundation with a deep well and a system of canals. He believed that this was where the famous gardens were located. Modern researchers offer an alternative version. In their opinion, the gardens were not located in Babylon, but in Nineveh, and were built by King Sennacherib. This explains the absence of inscriptions about the construction of this object in Babylon. Regardless of what actually happened, the Hanging Gardens of Semiramis have completely disappeared, leaving not a single fragment of wood. Today, only dusty, excavated trenches stretch across their supposed location in the Iraqi sands. This creation of light was humanity's first step in its quest to subjugate nature by creating an artificial paradise. However, as soon as the mechanism stopped and people left the majestic city, nature took its toll. The The landscape swallowed the gardens, leaving us only a beautiful legend about the king's love for his wife. The Temple of Artemis in Ephesus was not just a temple, but an entire city within a city, recognized as the best building in the Greek world. Its fate is full of dramatic events, as this wonder of the world was repeatedly destroyed and rebuilt. Construction of the large-scale version began around 550 BC. King Croesus, whose name became synonymous with wealth, undertook the financing. Architects Chersiphron and Metagenes faced a serious problem. The region was prone to earthquakes that could turn buildings into ruins. To withstand the forces of nature, they chose a marshy lowland for the foundation. The builders believed that the pliable soil would serve as a shock absorber, softening the tremors. To ensure a solid foundation, they dug a huge pit, which was filled with a mixture of charcoal and sheep's wool. Massive marble slabs were laid on this unusual cushion. The result was a colossal building. 127 marble columns, each 18 meters high, supported the roof, and inside were stored works of art by the greatest sculptors and artists of the period. The temple served not only as a religious center, but also as the largest repository of valuables and a refuge where anyone could find shelter from their persecutors. Its heyday lasted 2 centuries, until the fateful night of July 21st, 350 BC. That night, Herostratus, driven by a desire for eternal glory, broke into the building and set fire to the wooden beams of the ceiling. In a matter of hours, the temple, which had taken decades to build, burned to the ground. The high temperature cracked the marble and turned the masterpiece into a pile of rubble. Legend has it that on the very night that the Temple of Artemis was engulfed in flames, Alexander the Great was born in Macedonia. The inhabitants of Ephesus executed the culprit and took unprecedented measures to destroy the memory of him, but this decision had the opposite effect. The name of Herostratus went down in history as a symbol of the destruction of beauty. When he grew up and conquered these lands, Alexander the Great offered the inhabitants of Ephesus to reimburse the costs of rebuilding the temple, but on one condition: his name had to be carved on the facade. The Ephesians showed cunning and rejected the king's offer, arguing that one god should not build temples to other gods. As a result, the temple was restored at the expense of the townspeople by 323 BC. It became even more grandiose and stood for several centuries, surviving the conquest of Rome. The decline of the Temple of Artemis began with the spread of Christianity and the fall of the Roman Empire. In 263 AD, Ephesus was attacked by Gothic tribes. The treasures were stolen, and the building itself was seriously damaged. However, the final blow was dealt by Emperor Theodosius I's decree in 391, which banned pagan cults. The Temple of Artemis was closed and dismantled. The expensive slabs were taken to Constantinople for the construction of Hagia Sophia, and the columns were used to make lime for everyday needs. What once saved the temple from destruction by earthquakes eventually led to its demise. Sediment and silt gradually flooded the foundation, and the ruins sank underground. By the 19th century, only a littered puddle remained of the wonder of the world. It was not until 1869 that archaeologist John Wood, after many years of searching, discovered the temple's foundation 6 meters underground. Today, a single restored column stands on this site, on which storks build their nests. Almost nothing remains of the former golden splendor of Ephesus, except for a single pillar rising in the middle of a swamp. While other wonders were dedicated to the gods, this structure became the embodiment of pride and grief. In 353 BC, the ruler Mausolus died in Halicarnassus. During his lifetime, he conceived of building a tomb that would surpass all temples in beauty and grandeur. After his death, the construction was continued by Mausolus's widow, Queen Artemisia, who cherished the memory of her husband and devoted her life to the creation of this grandiose monument. The best Greek craftsmen of the time were involved in the construction of the tomb. The mausoleum turned out to be truly unique, as it combined three different architectural styles. It was an impressive rectangular structure 45 meters high. Its base was a grand marble pedestal on which stood a temple with 36 columns. Above the temple rose a stepped pyramid crowned with a marble chariot drawn by 4 horses. Inside the chariot were statues of Mausolus himself and Artemisia. The building was striking for its whiteness and the multitude of stone sculptures of people and lions that adorned its walls. Such an unusual monument so impressed contemporaries that the king's name went down in the history of language, and all large tombs came to be called mausoleums. Unlike many other wonders, this structure demonstrated remarkable durability. It stood for a millennium and a half, surviving the fall of the empire and Alexander's conquests. Only in the 13th century did nature put an end to its grandeur, triggering a series of devastating earthquakes. The tremors destroyed the columns and pyramidal roof, turning the monument into a pile of rubble that remained untouched for 200 years. Excavations were completed in 1404 with the arrival of the Knights Hospitaller. They needed to fortify the fortress against Turkish raids and saw the ruins as a source of building material. Elements of the structure were reused to build new fortifications. It is said that the knights discovered a secret chamber with a sarcophagus inside, but when they returned in the morning, they found it empty. By the 19th century, only the moat remained of the mausoleum. Fragments of the chariot are now on display in the British Museum, and only ruins remain at its original location. Unlike the other wonders of the world, this creation did not stand in the open air, but was located within the walls of a temple. In 435 BC, the famous sculptor Phidias completed work on a statue designed to convey the greatness of the supreme god of the Greeks. Zeus sat on a huge cedar throne decorated with precious stones. His gigantic figure was so large that if he wanted to stand up, he could destroy the roof. The deity was 15 meters tall. Phidias used the chryselephantine technique. The frame of the statue was made of wood. Ivory was used to cover the body, and the deity's clothes were covered with gold. The statue gave the impression of a living being. Zeus's eyes were framed with large precious stones, and his head was crowned with a golden crown of olive branches. In his right hand he held the goddess of victory, Nike, and in his left he held a scepter with an eagle perched on it. Pilgrims felt deep reverence. It is said that when Phidias was asked if he had seen the god in person before starting work, he replied that he was guided only by descriptions from Homer's epic poems. It is said that having finished work on the sculpture, the master asked Zeus for a sign of approval. At that moment, lightning struck the black marble floor without damaging the statue. To prevent the ivory from cracking due to changes in humidity and dryness, the priests constantly rubbed the statue with olive oil. A special pool filled with oil was dug next to the throne, which not only protected the material, but also reflected the light from the doors, creating the effect of a mysterious glow, as if emanating from the god himself. For almost 800 years, Zeus Olympus was the main shrine of the ancient world. Even the Roman Emperor Caligula attempted to transport the statue to Rome to replace the head of the deity with his own image. However, according to legend, as soon as the workers approached the monument, the statue burst out in loud laughter, causing the scaffolding to collapse and the workers to flee in panic. The advent of a new world order marked the end of its greatness. In 391 AD, Emperor Theodosius I issued a decree banning the Olympic Games and closing all pagan temples. The Temple of Zeus was left unattended, and its rich decorations became easy prey for looters. At the beginning of the 5th century, around 416, a decision was made to save the statue. It was dismantled into fragments and transported to Constantinople, where it became part of the private collection of the wealthy official Lavas, joining other ancient masterpieces. In 475 AD, Constantinople was struck by a terrible tragedy, a massive fire that destroyed entire areas of the city. Both the Palace of Lavus and the majestic statue that adorned it perished in the flames. The wooden frame instantly burst into flames, the gold melted, the glass turned to ash, and the ivory plates turned to dust. Nothing remained of one of the most valuable and majestic monuments of humanity, except memories and images captured on ancient coins. The temple in Olympia, where the statue of Zeus once stood, was completely destroyed by an earthquake in the 6th century. Now, fallen columns are scattered in its place, serving as a reminder of the grandiose size of the building. In the local museum, you can only see Phidias's workshop, discovered by archaeologists near the ruins. The history of the 6 lost wonders of the world is not just a list of disasters, it is a vivid testimony to the transience of human glory. It shows that neither grandiose dimensions, nor gold, nor military power could save these objects from their inevitable end. Each of them disappeared in its own way. The only surviving wonder, the Great Pyramid of Cheops, has endured thanks to its exceptional simplicity and incredible mass of stone, which is fireproof and difficult to dismantle. All other masterpieces have become myths, leaving us only with riddles about what they actually looked like. Archaeologists are still searching for fragments of these structures, striving to piece together what once united people in their pursuit of perfection.